Time for Under 30, discussing Ford Motors. We welcome in our next guest. Senior markets correspondent George Tsilis is here to break down the legacy automaker. And George, this stock's not just under 30, it's like perpetually under 20. So safely following into our criteria here for under 30. But let's talk some Ford. Strike murmurs is on the forefront, I guess?
I think so. I mean, if you look at the concessions the company's actually offering, about a 15% increase in wages, doesn't look like that's been accepted by the UAW. And I think this is presenting challenges for not just Ford, but also General Motors. If you actually look at the other automakers, the international ones like Honda and Toyota, they're actually hitting 52-week highs, while Ford and General Motors are nearing some 52-week low levels. So I think the UAW issues are sort of plaguing the companies, but at the same time, I think the business model also is a little bit strained, because if you look at their business in the past decade or so, they're moving away from passenger cars. And I think if you look at some of the other automakers that stuck with passenger cars, like Toyota and Honda, that's been a big good business strategy, considering now that if you look at SUV sales for Ford, they were down about 6% year over year when they reported their August numbers. Total vehicle sales were down about 2% year over year. Now, truck sales were still higher by 8%, but I think the SUV market is getting a little bit saturated. There's a lot of competition, and that's an area where there's a lot more price sensitivity. And I think the elements behind this whole new business model around autos right now, which is a high price, low volume model, I think it's starting to see some cracks, because of the fact that unaffordability is just becoming very egregious from the standpoint of the average consumer not being able to afford just an average SUV now.
George, question for you. This is it would be an unprecedented situation when it comes to a strike. We're in a heightened environment for strikes that's happening when we look at what's happening in Hollywood and what was able to be avoided with UPS earlier this year, as well as pilots. But what kind of impact could this make on the big three automakers and the industry?
Well, I think in the industry, you have to separate the companies that are more affected by the UAW versus not. And some of the international companies, if you look, like I said, TM or Toyota, HMC, Honda Motor, both those companies are higher today. So I can tell you right now, the market basically is telling me or is communicating that the UAW strikes are affecting the domestic automakers much more so than the international ones. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. I also think that the companies that are still selling passenger cars from a business model standpoint are performing better, because they're a little bit more affordable than SUVs. And I think that's another thing to keep in mind.
Thank you to George Tsilis for the update on Ford Motors, senior markets correspondent for the TD Ameritrade Network. Real quick before we say goodbye, Renita, ground stop, it's canceled. The stock making a U-turn already here intraday. It's still down on the session, down just over 2.5%. But if we take a look at United Airlines, the stock has recovered over $1 off of its lows intraday, as the FAA now reporting ground stop canceled. No details, no update. I'm assuming the technology glitch or equipment outage, as it's been reported as, resolved at this point. Ground stop, though, is canceled. Thanks to George Tsilis. Thanks to Renita Young for joining me for the hour.